I always liked the idea of getting away from the city. So when my friend offered me his cabin for the weekend, I was excited. The drive took longer than I thought it would, winding through dense woods. By the time I got there, it was almost dark. The cabin stood alone, surrounded by thick trees, casting long shadows as the sun went down. The first night was uneventful. I lit a fire, read a book, and enjoyed the silence. The quiet was a nice change from the constant noise of the city. I went to bed early, the sound of the wind in the trees helping me sleep. The next day, I decided to explore. There was a lake nearby, about a mile's walk through the woods. I packed a lunch and set off. The trail was narrow and overgrown, but I found the lake without much trouble. It was beautiful, the water clear and still, reflecting the sky above. I spent most of the day there, eating my lunch and relaxing. On my way back, I noticed something strange. The forest seemed different, as if the trees had moved while I was gone. The trail I had followed was harder to find, and I felt a growing sense of unease. I eventually made it back to the cabin, but the feeling of being watched stayed with me. That night, I couldn't shake the feeling. Every noise outside seemed louder. I told myself it was just animals, but I kept glancing at the windows, half expecting to see someone looking in. I barely slept. In the morning, I decided to leave. The unease had grown too strong. As I packed my things, I heard a noise outside. It sounded like footsteps, but when I looked out the window, there was no one there. I grabbed my bag and hurried to my car, my heart pounding. I started the car and drove down the narrow dirt road. The feeling of being watched followed me. I glanced in the rearview mirror and saw movement among the trees. It looked like a figure, just standing there, watching. I sped up, gripping the steering wheel tightly. When I finally reached the main road, I felt a huge sense of relief. I drove straight back to the city, not stopping until I was home. I never told my friend about the strange feeling or the figure in the woods. I wasn't sure he would believe me. But I knew one thing for sure. I would never go back to that cabin again. The feeling of being watched, the figure in the trees, it was too real to be my imagination. Weeks later, I was back in the city, trying to forget the whole thing. One night, I was walking home when I felt it again, that sense of being watched. I turned around, and there, in the shadows of the alley, I saw the same figure. It stood still, just like in the woods, watching me. I quickly walked away, my heart racing. The city felt different after that. The busy streets and loud noises couldn't drown out the sense that someone, somewhere, was watching me. I started locking my doors and windows every night, double-checking everything. But deep down, I knew it wouldn't matter. Whatever had followed me from the cabin wasn't going to leave. And I realized, with a chilling certainty, that some things, once found, never really let you go. I always liked being alone, so when I found an old cabin in the woods, I knew I had to stay there for a bit. It was far from the nearest town, a perfect getaway from the noise of everyday life. The cabin was basic, with one room, a small kitchen, and a squeaky bed. The forest around it was thick and quiet, the kind of quiet that makes you feel completely alone. The first few days were nice. I read, went on hikes, and enjoyed the peace. But on the fourth night, things started to get weird. I was lying in bed, trying to sleep, when I heard a soft sound outside. At first, I thought it was just the wind or an animal, but it kept going, a gentle scratching at the door. I told myself it was nothing, but I couldn't fall asleep. The scratching kept going, and my mind began to race. I got up, grabbed a flashlight, and opened the door. There was nothing there. Just the dark forest looking back at me. I closed the door, feeling uneasy, and went back to bed. The next night, the scratching came back, louder this time. My heart was pounding as I lay there, listening. I didn't dare open the door again. Instead, I stayed up all night, flashlight in hand, waiting for the morning. By the fifth night, I was worn out but too scared to sleep. The scratching started earlier and was more urgent. I tried to ignore it, but it felt like it was inside my head. I checked the door, the windows, even the roof, but found nothing. It was like the forest itself was alive, closing in on me. On the sixth night, I decided I couldn't stay any longer. I packed my things, planning to leave at first light. But as the night went on, the scratching grew louder and more desperate. It wasn't just at the door anymore, it seemed to be all around the cabin. The walls creaked, and the floorboards groaned under some unseen pressure. In a panic, I grabbed my bag and ran out the door, flashlight lighting up the darkness. The forest was silent, but I felt like I was being watched. I stumbled down the path, branches scratching at my arms and face, until I finally reached my car. As I drove away, I glanced in the rearview mirror. The cabin stood dark and still, but I could swear I saw movement in the shadows. I didn't stop until I reached the town. I told myself it was all in my head, that the loneliness had gotten to me. I never went back to that cabin. But sometimes, late at night, I hear scratching at my own door. I wonder if the forest followed me home. And then, one night, I woke up to find the scratches on my bedroom door. I knew then it was not over. The forest hadn't just followed me, it was now part of me, and there was no escaping it. I always wanted to get away from the noise of the city, so I rented a small cabin deep in the woods for a week. It was a simple wooden cabin, sitting in a clearing surrounded by tall pine trees. The nearest neighbor was miles away, and that was just how I liked it. The first few days were perfect. I hiked, read books, and enjoyed the quiet. At night, I would sit by the fireplace, listening to the crackling logs and the far-off sounds of animals in the dark. It was exactly what I needed. On the fourth night, as I was falling asleep, I heard a noise outside. It was a faint rustling, like something moving through the bushes. I told myself it was just an animal and tried to ignore it. But the noise got louder and wouldn't stop. My heart started beating faster. I got up and looked out the window but saw nothing in the darkness. The next morning, I found footprints around the cabin. They were human, and they hadn't been there the day before. A shiver ran down my back. I decided to stay inside that day, keeping the doors locked and the windows shut. I couldn't shake the feeling that someone was watching me. That night, the sounds came back. This time, they were closer, right outside the cabin walls. I was terrified. I could hear heavy breathing, footsteps crunching on the fallen leaves. It felt like someone was trying to get in. I stayed up all night, holding a kitchen knife, my eyes fixed on the door. By morning, the noises had stopped, but I knew I couldn't stay there any longer. I packed my things quickly, my hands shaking. As I stepped outside, I saw something new, a piece of paper pinned to the front door. It had one word written on it in large, messy letters. Leave. I didn't need to be told twice. I threw my bags in the car and drove down the dirt road as fast as I could, my heart racing. I didn't stop until I was back in the city, surrounded by the familiar sounds of cars and people. Later, I found out that there had been reports of strange activities in those woods, but no one had been able to find out who or what was behind them. It was a mystery that no one could solve. Even now, I sometimes wake up in the middle of the night, sure that I can hear those same noises outside my window. I'll never forget the feeling of being watched in those woods. Some places are meant to be left alone, and I learned that the hard way. But sometimes I wonder if whatever was out there has followed me back to the city, waiting for the right moment to remind me that I'm never truly safe. I decided to spend a weekend camping in the forest to escape the busy city. The first day went well. I set up my tent, gathered firewood, and enjoyed the peace and quiet of nature. By nightfall, the crackling fire and the distant hooting of owls made me feel relaxed. The next morning, I woke up early and went for a hike. The trail was beautiful, with sunlight shining through the trees and birds singing. But as the day went on, dark clouds started to gather. I decided to head back to camp to avoid getting caught in the rain. By the time I got back, it had started to drizzle. I quickly gathered my things and put them inside the tent. The rain soon turned into a heavy downpour. I huddled inside, listening to the heavy drops hitting the tent. It was then that I noticed a strange sound, a rustling, too close to my tent to be just the wind or rain. I tried to ignore it, thinking it was just my nerves. But the rustling grew louder and more constant. I peeked out of the tent's flap and saw nothing but dark shapes and shadows. My mind raced, thinking of wild animals or, worse, a person lurking out there. I grabbed my flashlight and shone it outside, moving the beam across the campsite. Nothing. Just trees and the endless rain. But the sound continued, now seeming to move around me. My heart pounded as I realized it was no longer just rustling. It was the sound of someone, or something, moving through the bushes. I decided to get out of the tent and check it out. I walked carefully, the beam of my flashlight cutting through the rain. My footsteps were almost silent on the wet ground. Suddenly, I saw a figure crouching near my food supply. It was a man, drenched, trying to steal my food. He looked just as scared as I was when our eyes met. He stumbled back, mumbling something I couldn't hear over the rain. My heart was racing, but I tried to stay calm. Seeing he wasn't a threat, and was probably just as desperate as I was, I signaled for him to come closer. We both took shelter under a nearby tree, where the rain wasn't as heavy. I gave him some food and water, and we sat there in silence, listening to the rain. Eventually, the rain stopped, and the man, after thanking me, disappeared back into the forest. I never found out who he was or why he was out there, but I was glad the encounter ended peacefully. I packed up my things the next morning and left the campsite, feeling a strange mix of fear and relief. As I walked back to my car, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched. The trees seemed to close in around me, and every rustle of leaves made me jump. When I finally reached the car, I breathed a sigh of relief and drove away, promising myself I wouldn't camp alone again. Weeks later, I read a news report about a missing person last seen in the same forest. The description matched the man I had seen. They never found him. Now, every time I close my eyes, I see his face, and I wonder if he ever really left the forest, or if something else found him first. It was supposed to be a chill weekend away from the city madness. I decided to go camping solo, something I'd done a few times hassle-free. I found a spot by a quiet lake deep in the woods. The view was perfect, tall trees, clear water, and a sky so clear I could see the Milky Way at night. The first night passed smoothly. I sat by the fire, listening to the crackling wood and the sounds of nature around me. The next day, I hiked and fished. As evening crept in, I set up my small campfire again, cooked dinner, and settled in. Just after sunset, I heard rustling in the bushes nearby. Probably a raccoon or deer, I thought. Didn't bother me much. As it got darker, the rustling grew louder and more frequent. Unease crept in. I aimed my flashlight towards the noise but saw nothing. Convinced myself it was just my mind playing tricks and went to bed. I woke suddenly in the middle of the night. Something felt off. The forest was dead silent. No crickets, no owls, just eerie silence. Then I heard it again, the rustling, right outside my tent. Heart racing, I lay still, trying to figure out what it could be. Decided to check it out. Quietly unzipped my tent, stepped out with flashlight in hand, and pointed it towards the bushes. Again, nothing. Took a few steps away, scanning the area. Snap! A branch behind me broke. Whipped around. In the dim light I saw a man. Dirty, clothes torn, wild eyes. We stared. Didn't say a word. Slowly back towards my tent, eyes fixed on him. He stayed put. Reached my tent, grabbed my pack, and bolted. Ran through the woods, stumbling over roots and branches, not caring about noise. Just needed to flee. Reached my car, breathless, shaking. Fumbled for keys, started the engine, and sped off. Didn't stop till the nearest town. Pulled into a gas station, locked doors, and sat there, trying to calm down. Next day, it sank in how lucky I'd been. Never knew what that guy wanted. Reported it to authorities. They promised to look into it, but heard nothing more. Changed me. Love nature but cautious now. No more solo camping. Always let someone know where I am. That weekend reminded me, nature's beautiful but can also be unpredictable, dangerous. As I drove away, a chill ran down my spine. What if he wasn't alone out there? The forest always calmed me, a quiet escape from city life's hustle. Finding that cabin on my hike felt like fate. It was old but solid, deep in the woods with the smell of pine and earth all around. A little stream bubbled nearby. I decided to spend the weekend there, to relax and enjoy nature. The first day went smoothly. I explored, read on the porch, and listened to the leaves rustling. As evening came, I lit a fire and settled in for the night. But then things got strange. I heard noises outside, rustling in the bushes, twigs snapping. I figured it was just animals, common in these woods. But as night fell, the sounds grew louder. Every creak of the cabin made my heart race. I tried to tell myself it was my tired mind playing tricks. Then I saw shadows moving past the windows, quick and blurry. Fear gripped me, urging me to run. But where? The nearest town was miles away, and the darkness outside seemed impenetrable. I grabbed a flashlight and looked outside. The beams swept over trees, revealing nothing but darkness. Scanning further, I saw fresh footprints circling the cabin in the soft earth. My heart raced. Someone, or something, had been watching me, just out of sight. I hurried inside, locking the door and barricading it with furniture. Was it a hunter, a lost hiker, or worse? Hours passed in silence. Every creak and gust made me jump. Just when I couldn't bear it, I heard it, footsteps on the porch. My heart pounded as I held my breath, hoping it was my imagination. Then the door handle rattled, followed by a soft voice muttering words I couldn't understand. Fear rooted me in place. The intruder pushed against the door, testing my barricade. I had to act. Trembling, I grabbed the fireplace poker, the only weapon I had. The door groaned, starting to give way. Adrenaline surged as I swung the poker, hitting something solid. The intruder grunted, stumbling back. In that moment, I lunged forward, slamming the door shut and locking it with finality. Silence filled the cabin, broken only by fading footsteps. Morning came hesitantly, revealing damage to the door and lingering fear. I packed quickly, leaving the cabin and its memories behind. As I walked back, I felt eyes on me, footsteps echoing in the forest. The cabin stood silent in the distance, a reminder of the darkness that lurked there. We planned a relaxing weekend with friends at a cabin deep in the woods. We got there late Friday night, the darkness swallowing the narrow dirt road to our temporary home. The cabin looked cozy among tall trees, its porch squeaking in the wind. The air smelled fresh with pine. Inside, we laughed by the crackling fireplace, told stories, played cards, and enjoyed the quiet. But as night went on, a weird feeling crept over me. It wasn't just the dark or being alone. It was something I couldn't explain. I woke suddenly to footsteps on the porch. Heart pounding, I checked my phone. It was past 3 a.m. My friends were all asleep. The footsteps continued slowly, like someone trying not to be heard. I lay still, listening hard. Then, a shadow moved past the window, a tall figure. Panic gripped me, but I couldn't move. The figure paused at the door, then turned and walked away. I lay there, frozen, until I finally grabbed a flashlight and checked the locks. Morning came with relief and unease. My friends brushed off my story, but I couldn't shake the feeling. We decided to leave early. Loading the car, I saw something on the porch, a muddy, worn-out shoe, too big to be ours. Dread sank in as I realized someone had been watching us, waiting. We left fast, driving away from the cabin and its mysteries. But days later, I still felt watched, remembering the figure in the night. I never found out who it was, but one thing was clear: we weren't welcome in those woods, and whatever was in that cabin wasn't ready to let us go.